reduced to hoots and howls over things that I remembered. We used to have lots of fun over it. Is it bitter cold out?
No. Well, let me say, in the first place, we were sheltered. And I wore my old navy blue sweater because I don't like the jacket of this dress underneath the blue coat.
I don't either.
I don't care for the jacket much anyway, but it's okay.
I'm glad you wore the navy jacket for once.
I did.
I
was too warm.
Pretty church. Very fancy.
What is
the church?
The church.
I almost choked on all that incense. I've never been around so much incense. Really something.
Russ went to church with me one time, and I said, "How did you like the service?" And he said, "It was very interesting." I said, "How did you like the incense?" He said, "I thought they were going to just lay a smoke screen at the altar."
I know it.
Too much.
Well,
but I thought that guy was nice. He had a sweet face, that man, and he was smiling.
What?
That fellow that's swinging all that incense
John
around.
Davison, yes.
Yeah, and he had a little smile on his face. He didn't look as stuffy as some of the other people tend to look.
Stevens is always very formal. That's the way he always processes with his hands this way.
But the ritual is fun. I didn't think they still had those churches like that anymore. Mine is certainly
not very
like
many.
That.
When you've been the Good Shepherd, you've been somewhere.
Well, mine is very, very simple compared to
One of our friends came back from Oregon for the Christmas services. She's going to move back here. She's a veterinarian, and she's going to move back here.
So now, if I say something, you're going to yell that you knew all about it, and I suppose you do.
Well, maybe I
don't.
There's a heck of a
lot
I don't know.
Christian Amity, trying to bring the Christian churches together. Of course, that more or less has been going on for years.
That's been going.
But more than ever, just now, and in the envelopes of paper with things that I get every week or two from St. David's Church. There was an announcement that our rector is going to preach in a Roman Catholic church today for the first time that anybody who wasn't a Roman has ever done it. How about it, Mr. Hess? He's a very nice rector.
Now, I just went to a funeral in a Roman Catholic church.
Yeah.
It was, what would you call that, a funeral mass or something?
Yes, requiem.
What's that last?
I said, is that called a funeral mass? I don't know. They didn't. But it was so much lower than this church that I just went to.
Oh, yes. This is almost like a Roman Catholic church.
Well, the Roman Catholic church I went to was a lot lower than this.
Yes.
Was it?
You find all varieties.
Oh, heavens, yes. Yeah. It was more like the Methodist church in town, which is like the low Episcopal church service type thing. And that a stranger can walk into that and not feel out of place. I mean, it's terribly
out of place.
Yes, it's terribly uncomfortable.
Well, long before I ever was engaged to Will Lilly Heddens, when I was almost a kid, he used to come up. When we first knew him, Mother asked him where he went to church. You always asked everybody you first met.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, everybody did. Nothing.
Where do you stay?
It was making friendly conversation. It wasn't meant to be nasty or anything.
Because everybody did.
Or unkind or rude or anything. And he said, well, he'd been going, she knew he was a Methodist minister's son.
Yeah.
Have you got that thing turned on?
It's all right.
And he said he'd been going here and there and to different churches. And she smiles at him and says, well, you better try our church. And he said, that's a good idea. Where do you go? I know you're an Episcopalian. She said, right up the street here. We go to this church. St. John's. It was only about one long block. That's what it was. One real long block. And do you know, he liked it. He did come the next Sunday.
Probably because you were there.
No, I was only a kid, harum-scarum kid, carrying all over the house, kid fashion. And when Clark was at the house for the weekend, or wasn't he? Well, I think he was. He was up there so much. But anyway, this was before Charlotte and Win were engaged, so I don't know whether Win was there or not. But anyway, Will went to St. John's Protestant Episcopal Church, right up the street, you know, with Mother and Charlotte, and I suppose I went too, unless I was still in the Sunday school. But it was a very long and very dreary service. But anyway, we had to go. Mother made us go. And of course we belonged to the Sunday school, and I was very fond of Marion Mossman, the Sunday school teacher that was allotted to my group and my class. She was awfully nice. Older than my sister Charlotte. I thought she was as old as my mother, you know, at that time, if I was 13 or 14. But anyway, I loved Miss Mossman. And he said afterwards to Mother, Will, I mean, well now, Mrs. Newton, that isn't too far, too different from the service that my father holds in the Methodist Church. And Mother says, it better not be, or something like fresh, you know, like that. Well, she says, I come from a whole crowd of Methodists. Mm-hmm. The Ensigns were Methodists. The Prescotts were Episcopalians. But my grandfather did go over to his wife's church and become an Episcopalian when his parents died. And one of his 4 or 5 brothers did too. I forget which one. But Will also always thought Episcopal Church was all right. That is the low church.
Well, if you read the Methodist services, they're taken right out of the Book of England, Church of England, and rearranged.
Yes, of course.
That's right. Their liturgy is different,
and
but
sometimes
their services are the same.
Once in a while, Grandfather Lilly would get to talking, especially if I prodded him with questions. I never heard anybody else do it, about the church in England. And really, the Episcopal Church at one time was very domineering there, and I guess they were abusive to the people that weren't. He seemed to think they had been, and the people who were not in their church, see, and it gave great impetus to what's called the Methodist Church. But he was very young when he left England.
I was just going to ask you that. How old was he?
Well, 15 or 16.
Yes. Why did he come?
Well, I don't know why.
Just came?
Except that America over there was almost the same as money.
Sure.
They were people, the Lillys were, I mean, Father Lilly's, there are a good many Lillys, but Father Lilly's branch were tavern keepers or innkeepers.
Now, I never knew that. But wait a minute. Go right back to the beginning.
Oh, it's been on for quite a while.
Want me to say it again?
No, it's on.
You said they were
innkeepers. This, so go ahead.
Well, I'm trying to think what else I could tell you about it. Now, I don't mean that they were heavy drinkers, but they were innkeepers, which was all right. And some of them left England and came over here and found unexpectedly that they had to work very hard. Money was not lying in the streets for them to pick up. But even so, there was lots more opportunity here than there was for them in their part of England. Mm-hmm. And they were not in those days very much for trying another section of the country. People didn't move around and settle here and there as they do today at all. And Will, in vacation time, he was teaching, you see, at Yale. He went down home to Jersey to see his people, and he told them, he said, I go to an Episcopal church, a good deal, with Mrs. Newton. I've met her daughter. He meant Charlotte, and I think she's probably very much interested in my roommate. Win Clark, that we all call Skipper.
I didn't know that was his roommate.
That's
Yes.
Prescott's father.
Oh.
They were classmates. Well, now let me see. I think I have that right. And Win Clark and some of his fraternity brothers took Will, your grandfather, into a very nice fraternity, which was an honor and among the students, and made the new member very happy. But I know that my father-in-law was awfully nice to me when I went into the family, and I was interested in what he could tell me about England.
Yeah.
And I used to ask him lots of questions. And he told me right away when he and Mother Lily came up to our wedding, he said, well, Mary, this is repeating the names. He says, my parents were William and Mary. That kind of pleased him, And he was so nice to me. Always friendly and kind, and I thought very lovable. I thought he was an awfully nice man.
So now we know where Grandpa gets that.
No. Will was a good deal like his father.
It sounds like it, just from what the little
he was
story you're telling.
Father Lily was a dear. I was very fond of him always.
Did you know him, Mother? Did you know
my grandfather?
Grandfather Lily?
Oh, I just adored him.
Yeah.
Well, there you are.
I sat on his knee from the time I was in first grade, or
sure.
I was about 5 or 6 when we came to Philadelphia, and that put us right in his trolley car area.
He was like Uncle Joel. He would pick you up as a baby. Out by lots of young men, my Lord, they wouldn't have any more picked up a baby than they just said, oh, baby might break. Howard looked at it, and said, how do you do it?
Yeah.
I said, I'll show you, and I lifted my own child. Ooh, Howard says, look out, but he was only a kid, 14 or 15.
Well, when I was a little girl.
And yes.
You finish.
But, Grandpa Lily used to carry you around, Stella, when you were a baby. Walk around the house with you.
When I was a little girl.
When you were a small baby, I mean.
I understand.
But, it pleased me so. Mother Lily wasn't so fond of babies. She liked children when they got a little older, but she wasn't much for babies.
Like Aunt Carol.
How many did she have?
3.
3?
Will, and about 3 years later, a daughter, and 2 or 3 years later, another daughter.
Was it Anne? Gertrude and Anne?
Gertrude.
Is that who they were?
Rebecca was the
Rebecca.
youngest. Rebecca. The lovely girl.
Oh, beautiful names.
When I was a little girl, the doorbell was likely to ring on a Saturday morning. And there was a general rush of a jam to get there because it might be Grandpa.
Yeah.
And if it was, the first question was, how long are you going to stay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are you going to take home was the second question.
That's right.
How long are you going to stay was the main question.
Who can go home with you?
Dragging him in, holding on to him before he had a chance to get his overcoat off. And did it please him? Oh, he'd have all 3 of them in his arms at once. But the English always loved to have children. And a son and heir. Oh, mercy, that was heavenly. Well, this one turned out to be an heiress, but she was just as popular as if she'd been a... And then, a year later, when Brother Bill came to town, and I named him for the 2 men, for Grandpa and for Daddy, that man was walking on pink clouds, sailing around Haddon Heights. I have a grandson, and he's my namesake. How about that? I tell you, Mary's all right. As if I had done it on purpose. How could I control the sex of my child? Mary has given me a namesake. And then he'd laugh, I tell you, he'd say, Mary's all right. And, of course, after a while, it didn't suit. That's all. Gertrude was a very jealous person. And the Lord knows she had nothing to be jealous of with me. That was ridiculous, but she was. Foolishly so.
Well, she sounds like she was an insecure lady. Something. You never know how people
no, but
feel
you never
in a
know
family,
why people feel as they do.
when
No.
Grandpa wasn't that way, obviously.
Who?
Grandpa
No.
wasn't that way.
No.
But she...
Oh, no. Oh, Will
seemed
and
to
his
be.
sister were no more alike than as if they didn't belong in the same family. Because he was very different. And Rebecca was more like Will. Rebecca and Will were the congenial ones. They used to think alike about many things. Don't you know? And it made it very pleasant to be with her. But I miss Grandpa to this day.
Oh, yeah, me
I
too.
know.
Oh, honestly, I do.
You're talking about my father?
Yes,
Oh,
your,
sure,
I mean your
sure.
I looked at her and said, Grandpa.
Yeah.
I mean your father.
Mm-hmm.
I always went to sleep on his shoulder. And the bed is still lonesome when I go to bed at night.
I believe it.
Mine is too.
Of course it is. He used to laugh and push my hair back. I always let it hang loose, you know. Now, wait a minute. I'm going to say, I'll kiss your face, but I'll be darned if I'm going to kiss that mass of hair. And
He wanted to get to first base, didn't he?
Yes. But, oh, he was a darling.
Did he ever go to England? Did he ever?
Which one?
My grandpa. Did he ever go to England to visit?
No.
Were there many relatives left there?
I think so. Yes.
Sort of like my own father's situation, really.
Grandpa had friends in this country, and he was a young boy, you see, and these people took him in, but they weren't very nice to him. They did teach him one thing, the bricklayer's trade. Doesn't that seem funny? They were poor people that worked as what we'd call today laborers. But I guess they were good. I never knew who they were or anything about them. And then after a while, he grew up and began to get interested in the Methodist Church. And finally was ordained through the stages. I think he was first a deacon or whatever, if they call it that in the Methodist Church. I don't remember. Probably they do. He worked his way up. But he didn't go to college to a theological training as we know it today, because it didn't exist that way in those days. But he was always so friendly to me, and if anything puzzled me down in New Jersey, I could always go to him and get an interesting, sensible answer, which I couldn't get from Mother Lily, but I could get it from him. He was a very nice man. My mother liked him too. She liked both of them, but she especially liked Father Lily. Well, he was a minister, and he knew how to talk to people and how to make them like him. I think that they do. I've noticed a good man.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That's a good observation.
I think so.
I noticed that today when the ministers came to talk.
Yes, they're friendly.
That they know how to make
And they know how to make friends, you might say, or make somebody feel welcome. It's very nice.
Yeah, it's a good technique.
I'm glad they do. I think it's very nice. I guess they do that in all denominations.
Well, you get a lot of experience.
It's all just several paths that we're all heading to the same place.
I hope. Yes. Well, the little stories that Grandpa wrote for me about his childhood tell us about Grandpa Lily going about in a buggy.
Going about in
a buggy.
Probably to make parish calls.
Yes.
And go to farms. And while he didn't have big salaries, he never had a good salary, what we'd call it, but he had all kinds of things to aid living given to him. Whatever was the proper thing to eat at Christmas, I don't know whether it was a turkey in the early days or not. I mean the accepted, usual. People kind of connect turkey with Christmas. Everything like that was handed to him. Loads of delicious food that would be worth heaven knows what today. So he really did have a comfortable living, see.
And a house was provided for him?
A house was always provided for the minister, and it was decently and comfortably furnished. Awful to look at sometimes. I saw some of them, and I mean, I wouldn't have thought much of them in my day when I was young, but it was comfortable. All the living things were there, warm carpets and stoves and plenty of fuel for them and plenty of food, and their salary had to provide clothing and other things like that. It used to amuse me a little because it surprised me to hear them in the Methodist Church, different ones calling each other brother this and sister that. Good morning, Sister Thompson, Father Lilly would say to Mrs. Thompson. Oh, good morning, Mrs. Lowell, to someone, you know. Sister Lowell. I thought to myself, I wonder if I calls that lady Sister Jo. But I was pretty young myself, you know. And his daughters, or at least not Rebecca, but Gertrude, always ridiculed everything that was done. Nothing was sacred to her. She just ridiculed everything her father and every other minister did in the church. What, Johnny?
Which member of Daddy's family was it who was the able seaman in the British Navy and whose papers Bill has and whose sea chest my brother Bill now has?
It's a long time since I've thought of that, and I don't know much about it. But I think it was I think it was Father Lily's father in the early days before he was married.
That would make sense. He went to sea?
Yes, he went to sea. I'm pretty sure that's correct. Yes, one of them I know was an able seaman, but he had cousins by the name of Lily. If he didn't have brothers, I don't know about that. But it seemed to please Father Lily so to think that Will and I were bringing the same names back, Mary and William. You know, he thought that was very nice. But you can't help liking and loving older people who are lovely to you when you're real young. And he was always so nice to me. And when I would go out to Haddon Heights, I used to say always when I was alone, sometimes if I was going to his dad on Sunday, you know, I would say to him, now watch, when we opened the door was never locked. You could always open the front door and go in. It was country style. You go in and don't say, come on, Mary, anything like that to me, and I'll show you what I do. Oh, Will says the first time, what do you mean? What do you do? I said, now you watch, we'll have some fun. So Will went in first. This was before we had any children to bring with us, see. And then I'd go in on tiptoe on heavy carpets of the Haddon Heights house and see him sitting in front of the fire, with the fireplace, in a great big rock. And I'd slip up in back of him and put my hands over his eyes, you know, this way, and say, guess who? Guess who? And he'd laugh and say, that's my Mary. And from that time on, he always spoke of me as my Mary. Wasn't that sweet?
Yeah, isn't it?
Well, that's what my mother called me.
Well, no wonder Gertrude was jealous.
Well,
I don't mean no wonder, but...
I know what you mean. Oh, she didn't like it because her parents, like me, she was a very jealous woman, nasty disposition. Capable, nice looking, but very hard to live with. Oh, she had a cruel tongue. Capable, she sewed beautifully. She could make lovely clothes, and she did for herself and her mother and her sister. Everybody has a lot of good points, you know. In some ways, she was a holy terror. I always liked Father Lloyd. And he loved every one of my children equally. He tried to hold all three of them at once. Stella got in his lap first, Bill on the other knee, and Newton would creep in between them. And when Newton was coming, Father Lily gave so much love to your mother and Uncle Bill. I cried and I said to myself, oh, he loves them so I don't believe he'll love this third one that's coming. So I went and asked him, and did he laugh? I said, Father, will you love this little one that's coming? It's true that I don't really want him because I've only got 2 hands and I'm swamped right now. I felt that I didn't know how I was going to take care of 3 babies so close together. But of course, I did love him after I saw him. He was born smiling at me. He was darling. And Father said, oh yes, I'll love him just as much as I love the others. And went away upstairs and laughed. He didn't let me see him laugh. He took my questions seriously. He was very kind. He never ridiculed anybody, I don't think, in his life. You can't help but like someone who is that way. He had a very lovely disposition. And he adored Will, your grandfather. Oh, he was my son, you know. Very fond of him. Proud of him.
He must have been proud when Grandpa went to Yale. He must have been proud when Grandpa went to
That's what I mean.
To Yale, especially.
Oh, he was. He was. And I heard him. He didn't know that I was within hearing distance, but I heard him tell several people, friends around there, that Will had married a girl who came from the right kind of a family. Wasn't that nice? That's what he thought of the Newtons. And he was nice to Carol and all. Charlotte didn't see so much of him, but Carol saw him 2 or 3 times, and she thought he was a few times. She thought he was nice. And Rebecca was awfully nice. Oh, she was lovely.
Now, she's the lady who married the Hyers?
Yes, she married into the
Eugene
Hyers.
Hyers?
Yes. It was unfortunate in one way because he was an alcoholic. He didn't have to work. He had plenty of money.
Oh.
Yes. And he didn't work, and it wasn't good for him, you know, except to supervise 2 or 3 farms he owned. But they were cousins of the Hyers root beer people. He bought her a lovely home down in Salem, New Jersey. And they made some very nice friends there. The Hilliards, one family, that they were Quakers. There were lots of Quakers in Salem, New Jersey. But Rebecca and her husband were friends with all the nicest people there. And they used to come to see her. Look at that tree.
Oh,
it
it's
just
so
sparkles.
beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
Just beautiful.
It's snowing a little bit.
But Carol, I was very fortunate in lots of ways. I had a very dear husband. He was a darling. I certainly did love him, and I miss him terribly to this day. And his hair was perfectly beautiful. It was all curls. Newton Bosuck comes by his curly head, by inheritance, I think, from his grandfather.
Yeah, probably so.
Anyway, I like to think so.
I think you're
He
right.
had beautiful curly hair, and grandfather's hair was curly. I used to kid him about it. I'd say, how are the curls today doing? He said, the curls will have to be brushed out. No, I said, no, you're not going to brush them all straight. And the women all sleeping in curling things at night to get curly hair. Once, Grandfather Lily went back to England when Will was a baby. He was married, you see, and had this young wife from the Davis farm across the river and not too far out of the city of Camden.
And her name was?
Davis.
What was her first name?
Estella.
Oh.
I mean, your
Estella
grandfather's mother.
Bodine? Bodine?
Bodine.
Bodine
yes, they
Davis.
called. She was named for a friend, Estella Bodine. That name was not in the family until they gave it to Mother Lily when she was born.
Yeah. All right. So he had married her,
Now, what was I going to
Estella,
tell you?
that he went back to England.
He went back to England to see his mother because his mother and a single sister who was living, whose name was Mary. She was Mary Lily, same as the mother, over there. And the brother Sam. Well, that's right. That Mother Lily only had 2 children left. Others had died. She had Mary and William and Sam. And William was Father Lily, came over to our country. What was I going to tell you?
He went back to visit them.
Oh, yes, he wanted to see her before they went to Australia.
Oh.
Yes, they settled in Australia. The mother with her 2 grown children, see, Sam and Mary. Now, what was the name of the city? Oh, what's the big first coastal city there? Lord, I ought to know. If your mother was here, she'd know instantly.
Did you say they came from Kansas?
And I don't mean Melbourne.
Oh, in Australia.
In Australia. I don't mean Melbourne, but there's another. Well, anyway.
Where did they live in England? Do you recall?
In Ramsgate.
Ramsgate.
I don't know how far that is from London. Your mother went there.
Oh.
That night. She said she stood up and looked around her and said to herself, 100 years ago, my grandfather left this beautiful place and came to America. You see, that's where everybody was saying it's where opportunity lay, across the water. But he used to get letters from Australia, and he used to write to his sister and his brother Sam. And they knew that he had become a Methodist minister. They knew all about his life. Yes, he used to drive all around in a buggy, and he had pictures of a beautiful horse that he had. And Mother Lily was afraid to ride with him, his own wife. She was so afraid of horses. Here she was, a farm girl. She was afraid of every animal that walked, except maybe a newborn chicken. She may not have been afraid of it.
Poor thing.
Well, yeah, it was pitiful. It was really very unfortunate, and so difficult to live with. And her daughter Gertrude kept pets. I don't think she should have when her mother was in such terror of them. But she wouldn't consider anybody. She wanted a dog, she'd go get one, you know. Bring it home and say, here, this is my dog. She didn't care what her mother thought.
Oh, poor mother. So how did she go about? She probably didn't.
In fear and trembling.
Oh, dear, poor lady.
Oh, yes, it was hard on her. And even I used to, when I saw that horse, I picked up some lump of sugar from the table and said to Father, come on, I want to feed the horse some sugar. Well, he says, that's good. And we went out to the barn and fed the horse. She came out after me and she said, now, Mary, I want you to come out of this barn. That's very dangerous. Don't go so near to that horse. Why, the horse was as peaceful as I was. Standing there, I mean. And of course the horse kept turning and putting his nose in my hand for more sugar. Well, she was in such suffering that I just left the barn. I thought, well, I can't torment her that way. I'll have to keep out of the barn. But it's really a very unfortunate thing to be so timid as she was. Oh, my. Afraid of cats, dogs, horses, cows, chickens, and she grew up on a farm. Can you imagine?
No.
Now, her twin sister used to ride horseback, and they said she did very well. Mother Lily never rode horseback. Oh, ho, ho. No. Of course, she didn't have to, but I mean, that was the great difference in people.
That's a surprising little...
Funny, the difference in people that are born into the same family. My voice is terrible, isn't it?
People have that fear in voting. There are some people that never overcome their fear of it, no matter how many times they do it.
In a way, don't you think?
You know better than I do. But you can be around something and still not like it, I guess. But it does sound strange for a farm girl.
I mean sailboats.
Yeah, well, they are scary.
I don't mean big boats.
Yeah.
There's engines and everything. Well, I was never frightened but once in a small boat. A very rough sea came up and winds and everything. But we were with people that knew how to handle the boat and nothing happened. We got home all right.
I've often thought that
Hasn't it done well for
Oh, it's beautiful.
1907?
Yes.
Can you see it plainly?
Oh, yes. I'm just taking a look.
I love the weight of the silver, Carol.
Yeah, I do too. It's just pretty. Very pretty.
I really don't care very much for thin, lightweight, tinny kind of silver. But I love ours because it's all heavy and good.
How did you choose this? Now tell me all about it.
What?
How did you choose this?
I didn't choose it, but Rebecca chose it. Rebecca and her husband sent us a chest of silver. Wasn't that lovely? For a wedding present.
Oh, and that's right. It wasn't a bridal register where they asked you what you liked?
No, dear.
Or anything.
They didn't have them. No, dear. They didn't have them.
They just guessed. They knew you.
Yes, I thought it was a love. Newbury or Newburyport. Or Old Newbury, something like that's what it's called.
Now, how much do you suppose they paid for that whole chest?
Well, I know. And a beautiful oak chest. I think Uncle Newton has the chest today. Why, I know they paid $100. And look what was in it. 12 forks like that.
Oh, my
12
soul
knives,
and body.
12 teaspoons, yeah. 6 grapefruit spoons, just as good as all the others. 6 serving spoons, which you saw.
I saw them.
And 6 of the second size. Small. Well, I was eating soup spoons, and some people use them for serving things like cranberry jelly, the extra things that come on the table. What would it be worth today, Carol? 1,500?
Oh, more than 500. I don't know. Mother would know. I don't know the market value
I bet
of
it would
things.
be between 500 and 1,000, don't you think?
Oh, I would think so. Especially
really
complete. And
I don't mean to exaggerate, but I think it would be. But I think it's very handsome, don't you?
Oh, I think it's beautiful.
And then
Just
I had
beautiful.
a good many pieces of odd pieces that it was the fashion to give.
How many settings do you have?
What?
How many?
Of these?
Yeah.
12.
12.
Of 3 things.
Well, if it was $100 a setting, then it would be $1,200 plus the extra pieces, plus the chest, plus the fact that it's all a complete set. I would
The chest was beautiful.
get right up there.
Yeah, it would.
And how do you happen to know? Just for curiosity's sake.
How do I happen
to know the cost?
I don't know.
You
Somebody
just do.
So I don't remember who told me, but somebody did. I always loved it and took care of it.
It's a good thing you liked it.
Oh, yes, but they never did ask the bride. Oh, I must tell you something funny. Your mother has laughed over this so. You see, I was between 18 and 19 when we were married. And not being 21, I couldn't go with Will to to the proper bureau and get the marriage license. See?
Oh.
I wasn't of age. See? I wasn't 21. So he went alone and brought the paper home, this license from my mother as my guardian had to sign her consent to having me married, letting me marry him. And I said, ooh, this way, you know. Let me see it quick, I want to see. My mother says, go away. She says, that isn't proper, the idea. And she wouldn't let me read it. Wasn't proper. Dad sat down over there and laughed and he couldn't laugh anymore. And he went downstairs and told Win Clark, and the two of them howled together. Wasn't that funny? That was her idea of propriety and what was right.
That is funny.
I do think that's funny. And another thing, I never was allowed until I found a paper and did it in spite of her, to read an account of my own marriage that came out in New Haven paper. What? Read your own? Well, I guess not. Now here, give me that paper. Wasn't proper.
That's strange.
Wasn't proper.
Where did she get that idea?
Well, goodness only from her parents, I suppose. I never heard anything funnier than that, except the other one.
Did she agree right away when you said you wanted to be married? Or did she try to make you wait until you were older?
No.
She thought you were...
She thought I was old
It was
enough.
a good time?
I wasn't, because I didn't know anything. I mean about cooking and housekeeping. And I never was allowed in the kitchen to do any work, I mean. Go on now, Bridget's busy. Bridget was the cook, see. Or Mother was making something fancy in the kitchen. Go on upstairs, don't bother me. She never would let us. And really, it wasn't so good, because it was expensive. I cost Will a lot more with my mistakes in the kitchen, you know. Couldn't help it, even I didn't know how to do it.
That's hard to learn from scratch.
It was a hard way to learn. And I told him, I said, I don't know anything about the kitchen. He says, do you think I don't know that? I've been at the Newtons enough to see that you and Carol are never allowed in the kitchen. And well, I said, I'll learn. I'll try to learn. Oh, he says, I can fry potatoes. Come on, it'll be all right. He could cook a little. Oh, dear, the fun we had. Because sometimes I used to stop in the middle of cooking and try a new dance step in the kitchen, especially if Joel Sperry had come, unexpectedly dropped in. He and I trying it together. Will would come home for lunch. Instead of the lunch being ready to put on the table for him, we were dancing in the kitchen. One time I know I intended to cook bacon and eggs, a big platter of bacon and eggs for noon instead of in the morning. Oh, I was asleep in the morning. I had an awful time getting breakfast. And Will came in and found either 4 or 6 of us all dancing in the kitchen. Flora Webb and some boy, Carol and Joel, and no, I was dancing with Joel, and Carol and a boy named Earl Steele, who was in Yale, and Flora Webb, a friend of ours, and some other boy that she was dancing with. And he just didn't laugh but for the doorway. He was really perfectly dear about it. Lunch hadn't even been thought of. We didn't know it was nearly 1 o'clock. We were trying the new dance step. And just singing, humming, you know, la la la, like that. We didn't have any music there. But, oh, Lordy, we had fun. So, anyway, I started to carry the platter of bacon and eggs out. Of course, I tipped it. And Dad saved it just in time to, the bathroom was right next door, out of the kitchen, and the bathtub at the end, near the kitchen. Well, the bacon and eggs, some of them did go in the bathtub, but others he rescued and sat down and ate and said goodbye, kids, and went back to his afternoon classes. Now, what in the heck do you suppose he wanted to marry me for? With things like that, you know. Why, there were girls as old as himself that were called in New Haven old maids. 28, you know, almost 30, that he used to go to call on before we married. I don't see why he didn't pick one of them. Oh, but he didn't.
Oh, sounds like he wanted to have more fun than that.
Yeah, well, we did have fun.
Now, how did your mother ever think that you were prepared to be married?
Wait a minute, what?
How did your mother ever suppose that you were prepared to be married?
I don't know, and I wasn't prepared. I didn't know anything. I did know how to sweep and dust and how rooms should look, and I knew enough to realize it took housework to do it, and that I didn't mind. I could clean a room and put it in order and make it look very nice. Although I had done that at home, but the kitchen was out.
Were the other girls married at that age, Carol?
Well, Charlotte had been married either 1 or 2 years before me, but she was a good deal older. And Mother Charlotte used to say, sure, I could cook, I could make fudge. Charlotte helped me a lot after I was married, although she was in another town. She helped me. Mother didn't. Mother didn't want to bother. What a heck of a time I had learned to cook the food I burned. And especially if Joel or somebody called up on the phone, I'd stay on the telephone.
And who gave you the chafing dish?
What?
Who gave you the chafing dish?
My cousin Henry Hooker, whom I was very fond of. I'm sorry that I lost track of him later.